This is a tragic tale of the destruction of a family farm by way of weaponizing zoning regulations and then giving control of that weapon to commissioners whose conflicts are blatant, their refusal to recuse themselves brazen, and their aggressive and hostile participation egregious. The farmers are the Cashman family. Their attorney is Ed Casella. The villainous and conflicted commissioners are Gary Bousquet and Adam Moore. The telling begins here with Attorney Casella describing their conflicts and urging them to recuse themselves. Their failure to do so makes a mockery of hours of hearings and deliberations. Now the story begins. Action?
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order. If I may, I provided a correspondence earlier today requesting the disqualification of 2 of the members of the commission before they participate in this hearing process or in any aspect regarding this application. I think that matter needs to be determined as to whether or not the 2 individuals are going to be seated for this application or going to disqualify themselves.
Okay. Would you like to read the letter that you presented?
Sure. Thank you. I think that I just wanted to do this at the appropriate time.
No, that is the
Didn't mean
appropriate
to
time.
interrupt,
One
but...
of the gentlemen that you were asking to himself had a question, so this is the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you. Edward Casella, for the record, representing Jeffrey and Patricia Cashman. And I guess another point of clarification is, are we in the public hearing? Has the public hearing been opened, or are we still preliminary?
Yes, it's open.
Public hearing is open. Just wanted to make sure. We submitted a correspondence earlier today asking that 2 of the members of the commission, Gary Bousquet and Adam Moore, disqualify themselves from hearing this application because we believe under General Statute Section 8-11 they need to disqualify themselves because they have either a personal or financial benefit or detriment, so to speak, in hearing this application, as those terms are laid out in the statute and as they're further defined in case law. With respect to Mr. Bousquet, he's the owner, upon information and belief, he's the owner of Grove Gardens Landscape Center and Grove Gardens Landscaping. Part of the operations at Grove Gardens includes production and manufacturing as in the sale of mulch. And we all know one of the main reasons that we're here today is the Cashman's request as part of their agricultural and farming use to be able to produce and sell mulch. And this includes people coming to the site to pick up mulch and the delivery of mulch off-site to other properties. And these are 2 of the services that Grove Gardens offers at their facility on Boston Post Road. Therefore, we believe there's a direct business conflict, so to speak, between Mr. Bousquet and his operations at Grove Gardens and what Mr. Cashman is trying to do, which raises the question as to whether he can reasonably and fairly decide this application. There doesn't need to be a direct conflict. There just needs to reasonably be a question as to whether or not approving or denying a certain application could inure to his benefit. And the fact that he provides the exact same service in the exact same town where there's not a lot of other operators who do these things on this level from a wholesale perspective, we believe that is a financial conflict of interest. With respect to Mr. Moore, upon information and belief, Mr. Moore's sister-in-law, Kristen Cafferty, lives right next door to the Cashmans at 70 River Road. My understanding that Mr. Moore's wife, Heather, is Kristen's sister. So there's a direct familial relationship with the property owner next door and one of the members of the commission. And even if the Caffertys don't have any objections, one of the considerations that this commission needs to make under special permit is what the impact are on adjacent property owners. It's in your regulations, whether it's going to impair their value, whether this use is in harmony, directly impacts, potentially, positive or negative, what's happening next door. So we believe that that is a personal conflict of interest due to the familial relationship, and that he should step down for those reasons and not participate in the public hearing or the deliberation process. Further, there's been some preliminary discussions at the initial meeting believe on July 9th. A subsequent meeting on August 13th, where these two individuals have expressed the desire to deny the waivers outright without even hearing what we have to say. So we additionally believe that that is prejudging what we're coming in to ask, without even hearing why we want a waiver of the landscaping plan or the traffic plan or the other plans. They've said we should deny those. So there's also a prejudging implication in our request for them to disqualify themselves as well. Thank you.
Gentlemen, I need that if you are going to recuse yourself from this application.
I will not be. I'd like to state for the record, I do not produce or manufacture mulch. I'd like to state for the record, I do not produce or manufacture recycled wood chips. I also have never once, and it was interesting that you didn't use an example, never did I predispose myself towards any of the waivers.
Well, I think that is
Mr. Bousquet, in his response, stated he doesn't produce mulch. Part of what's requested to be happening at the Cashman farm is selling mulch, having customers come pick it up and deliver it to off-site activities. I believe those are part of his operations, upon my belief. So I would like to at least hear what his response is to that aspect of it, not just the production and manufacturing of mulch, but also the sale, the availability for it to be picked up on-site, and also the delivery to customers.
Well, that wasn't part of your original
Yes, it was.
question. Grove Gardens has been around since 1951. We do not manufacture or produce any mulch on site. Of course, first of all, yes, we sell mulch. I do not sell recycled wood chips, and I do not have a conflict of interest. I've never purchased recycled wood chips. I don't sell recycled wood chips. So I hope that answers your question.
Do you sell mulch where people, if I may, Chair, through yourself?
I would rather.
I think I would like to be able to get these facts into the record, and I'm not sure there's another way to get
Grove Gardens
other than asking
sells mulch.
questions as a commission member.
Stop. Go ahead.
Thank you. Do you have mulch does Mr. Bousquet have mulch available to be picked up at his location in bins on the property at Grove Gardens?
You're asking him or me?
I'm asking through the chair.
Through the chair.
Yes, I do.
Okay. And does Mr. Bousquet deliver mulch to customers by using their vehicles?
My vehicles or customers' vehicles?
Your vehicles.
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. And again, this is exactly what Mr. Cashman is proposing to do. Direct competition from a business perspective, so we renew our objection to Mr. Bousquet's being seated as part of this application. Thank you. Okay.
This brings us to Grove Garden Landscaping, located at 341 East Main Street and listed with the Connecticut Secretary of State as owned by one Gary Bousquet. And according to the Vision Appraisal field card for the property at 341 East Main, the address of Grove Gardens is owned by Willowbrook Properties. And according to the Secretary of State of Connecticut, Willowbrook Properties is owned by Gary Bousquet. Looking then at Grove Gardens Landscaping website, it lists as its owner and expert none other than Gary Bousquet, and proudly offers, among other services, mulch in direct competition with Sprucey Hill Farm, and announces on Facebook when that mulch is available for sale to the public. From the obituary of Charles Bernhard, who passed in January of 2018, we learn that Heather Moore and Kristen Cafferty are sisters, and that Heather is married to Adam Moore, making them in-laws. Kristen and Matt Cafferty are budding neighbors of the Cashmans at 70 River Road, presenting Adam Moore with a direct personal conflict. of interest.
My name is Kristen Cafferty. This is Matt Cafferty. We live at 70 River Road. Our property is directly adjacent to the Cashman property. We have lived and owned the property since 2001. We would like to note that when we bought the property, the Cashmans did not have a farm as it stands right now. We are not here to speak in favor of the farm and mulching business, but we're also not here to speak against it, for it or against it. That's why we want to speak in general. What we're here to ask is for Planning and Zoning Commission to interpret the zoning law regarding enclosure of the farm animals to include fencing and corral. Considering the Cashman's corral contains his animals during the day, a good 12 plus hours of the day, we feel it should be considered an enclosure. We'd also ask that due to that legal barrier be upheld by the Cashman property. We appreciate the mulching that they have started to look into that offer. The enclosure, including fencing and corral, from our understanding, should be 50 feet from the front of the property and 35 feet from the side of the property, and with the 25 feet of vegetation, including, again, around the corral. And of course, we ask that also 35 feet from the property line of the mulching piles also be upheld. We feel strongly that Mr. Cashman should be able to enjoy his property and run his business. We consider ourselves good neighbors and have had a good relationship with the Cashmans since we've lived there. But we also feel strongly that the surrounding property owners should be allowed to enjoy their property and protect their property values. We believe that is why the zoning laws are set with the setback requirements and why the corral and fencing should be considered enclosures.
At the very first Planning and Zoning Commission meeting where this application is to be heard, before the applicant has even had a chance to express his interest in this application, Adam Moore sends a letter to be read in his absence, expressing his opposition to granting any of the waivers, a demonstration of his prejudice and opposition to this application. Action?
Okay, is there correspondence?
From Adam Moore, Monday, August 13, 2018, to Kathy S. King, Michael Rossi, regarding agenda item 5-SC-026. I will not be in attendance at the meeting this evening. I wish I have the following statements read into the record. While I am currently neither in favor or opposed to this application, I take exception to the multiple requests to waive documentation required by our zoning regulations to accompany this application for the following reasons. 1. The waiver of documentation required by our regulations sets a precedent that any applicant can request a waiver of these requirements. 2. With all the rumors of scandal this commission has faced over the past few years, the perception that the commission has waived requirements for a commission member could be very dangerous. 3. The commission required all the documents to be provided for a similar application, 16-098, stockpiling of wood chips in an I-2 zone, which was ultimately denied. Waiving our requirements on this application could open the door for the applicant with 16-098 to bring suit against the commission. Adam Moore.
At the very first meeting where this application is to be received, Gary Bousquet voices his opposition to even receiving the application, demonstrating his bias and prejudice against this applicant and this application. Action?
Can I ask Mr. Caselli a question?
Well, again, it's related to the completeness of it.
Exactly. So if you bear with me, Ms. Knight, has anybody spoke to you or your client about rescinding some of the waivers? Or at any point, did anybody say to you or your client that you may want to reconsider that because it is highly unlikely that it could move forward with those exceptions? Let me finish. What normally would happen in our offices, somebody would come into land use, they would put the application in, the application would be reviewed by Julie and Eric. At that point, many of us have done it, Julie and Eric would say, are you sure you want to move forward with this? Because historically, these items have never been waived. And that it could put the entire application in jeopardy. Did anybody mention that to you or your client?
Not in this application. I have had past applications with the commission and I requested waivers in certain instances. So I'm familiar with the process. There's actually waiver requests in the original submission. The waiver request was fine-tuned following the meeting with the subcommittee, turns down to Rich Roberts, the attorney.
At the public hearing on September 5th, Gary Bousquet continues his aggressive and hostile opposition to this application. Action.
Very good. Yeah.
I brought this up when we first accepted the application, and this is probably why the attorney thought I was against it, is I cautioned why there were so many requests to waive. Especially since in my 2.5 years, some of those items never get waived, such as soil erosion control plan. If you had an application like this, why wouldn't you just do the requirements? And I heard the testimony from the attorney that, well, it's already that way. But this is an after the fact application. It's already that way because it's currently in violation. So that's kind of the big issue, and that's kind of what everybody's talking about here. Yes, it's been a farm for so many years in violation. Yes, it's been a wood chip pile for so many years in violation. So yeah, the topography is not changing because it changed years ago. So why would we waive, by the way, we wouldn't waive almost any of this for anybody. Why wouldn't we waive any of these? And that doesn't mean I'm for or against the farm. It means all our other applicants had to go through this. The buffer doesn't count if it's on her property. It only counts if it's on your property. So I'm looking at the site plan trying to figure out how you could maintain 15,000 square feet and have the vegetative buffer in place. But I don't really know that because the site plan is incomplete. I don't have the materials I need to have in front of me. I have a question for our attorney. 27-1-60 says production and manufacturing of goods and materials is not permitted in the RA. So how does that impact it?
Well, it is permitted as a special exception under the farm section.
All right, so I guess the hinge-pin for me is there's two pieces of this. You want to have a farm with animals, I get it. And you want to have a manufacturing facility, a processing facility. I guess the question from our attorney is, how do we treat decisions that we've made in the past, very recently, for the same type of operation? How do we weigh that into our deliberation?
There's a legal standard that if there's an start off by look at the standards and the regulations and whether the applicant has met the requirements that they're written. If there is an ambiguous provision of the regulations, there's law that says that if your commission has adopted a time-tested interpretation of a phrase or a word or etc., then you can rely on that. So I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but if there's been an instance in which your commission has interpreted some of these things in a way that's different than what the application is proposing here, you might be able to rely on that. But can you expand in terms of something that
Sure,
you've done
we recently denied tree companies dumping wood chips on a concrete pad only for transferring those wood chips in an industrial zone. It's just currently denied within the last year.
Because they're not a farm. They had no farm, agricultural, any input. It was a junkyard with highly flammable products in a junkyard that they were using torches to cut something, and it was deemed a fire hazard. This was designed by Ed Casella as a workout program to be able to allow us to have the mulch on our property. And at this point, what we have determined was all of this, and I'm going to say it right now, that we were legal 100% non-conforming to the zoning regulations. It was the commission's desire to make sure that the non-conforming, we were deemed non-conforming. And legal with that, because now your zoning regulations came into effect. You're taking 30 years worth of non-conforming and expecting us to be able to perform miracles for 30 years worth of agricultural something here, and we're asking for those fairnesses to be done so we can make it to the target line so we can get back to business. Okay, that's it.
I have one more question.
Yeah, I have a
The applicant stated that he takes animals from other people and buries them on his property.
He never said that. He never said he buries them on his property.
buries them on his property.
Yeah, he never said he buried them on our property.
Carry them?
Guys, wait, we should.
Sorry.
Bury for neighbors on their property.
And that's why I'm clarifying for the public record.
If I could just jump in, because I think the applicant, probably when Mr. Bousquet was asking me actually the question on treating the two things, and now that I understand what you were talking about in the industrial zone, is where I started, which is you should apply the applicable regulations to this particular application. And in this application, your standards for special exception in this zone allow, as part of a farming operation, production, processing, preparation, or storage of horticultural commodities, including compost, mulch, manure, or other biomass products. So you have to interpret and apply that language. I wouldn't think that an application involving how mulch was treated on a pad in an industrial zone really implicated that language. So I think you kind of got it fresh in having to apply that language that I just read to you to this application.
At the second public hearing on October the 1st, Gary Bousquet continues to aggressively attack this application, as well as anyone who appears to express any support for it, including Terrence Downs. Action?
I have to start with, I am more than concerned about the fact that you're holding the other end of the tape measure and helping an applicant put together his site plan, and how that's going to result in any appeal that could happen on this.
Well, as I
Let me
said,
finish.
let me
Chairman,
address that.
I have
Let me
floor.
address it.
I think it is highly inappropriate. Now, if that person was...
Let him address it.
As I said, because it was requested that a detailed site plan be presented and more information, I figured that I would be questioning questions just like you are. And so if they put information on that, I wanted to be out there to actually witness him doing it. And by holding the tape measure, I can confirm that it's accurate. So that's the reason that I was out there doing that. Because I figured someone here would turn to me and say, well, Mr. Downs, did you look at the site plan and can you confirm that these numbers are accurate? Yes, I can, because I went out there and that was the reason.
Well, normally, we would have a surveyor, and we would take their license and not worry about whether our acting CEO is putting that math together. We would have an engineer looking at it and asking him to do this information. This is a big deal when it's going to come to the appeal, because it looks like that our acting CEO is acting as an agent for the applicant. I can't be the only one who has noticed that. So let's just put that in the public record. I don't know that our acting zoning enforcement officer should be doing this.
Well,
And would they do it for my application? And would they do it for the next person's application? If we're going to start letting our zoning enforcement officer measure with the applicant,
is supposed to be able to do a site visit. And then what
that's
you do-
way beyond the site visit, Mr. Chairman. Literally, his testimony was that he helped him put the site plan together. His testimony. That's all I have on that. Secondly,
Gary, if I may, again, if you're going to challenge me about that, you're going to listen to my explanation.
excuse me, I am the elected official, and
Well,
we
if
will
you
listen
are
to
challenging
Mr.
my
Chairman.
integrity.
Both of you, stop it. You're both cut off. Okay.
I have a...
You're cut off.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I have a question about the mulch pile. I've stood and I request to be recognized. Right, Robert's rules, you must recognize me.
That's not true.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. I can't ask about the mulch pile.
No, because you got out of hand, sit down.
Can I ask the question later?
Possibly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think I'm on seeing it a different way. We're not saying that the animal should be enclosed. We're saying once they get let out in the daytime, that little fence around the chicken coop, they don't call it a chicken enclosure, they call it a chicken coop. The area around the chicken coop, is that an enclosure? That's for you to decide. But
Well, is it set within the setback or?
well, we're determining. If
Yeah.
it's a fence, if we say it's a fence, then there is no setback. If we're saying that that is part of the enclosure, they can put pigs on, I'm just using pigs as a smelly example, like maybe chickens or smelly too. You could theoretically, and we would set a precedent, put livestock right on somebody's lot. Now, when I looked it up, for instance, horse grazing is considered fences, 30, 40, 50 acres was considered fencing. The smaller an area you got, it became an enclosure. Well, for me.
Adam Moore piles on, challenging the validity of the site plan. Action?
I have a couple issues with the site plan. Accuracy is one of them. Regardless of who pulls the tape measure, it's not a certified plan by a licensed surveyor. Even the residential applications we get have surveyed plans, they have engineered stormwater runoff controls. This is probably the first farm we've had to deal with since I've been on the commission. I'm not sure where it lands or what kind of qualifications need to be shown on this, but somewhere between, you would think it would be somewhere between commercial and residential. Even the residential has the 2-foot contours, so we can see which way the water flows, where the silt fence goes. I can't tell on this plan what's high, what's low, where the water goes. By the markings on the plan, they're not meeting the setbacks. There's areas here where they call out 25 feet, 28 feet vegetative. That doesn't meet the 35, so they're stating they're not in compliance. I'm not against this, but I don't think anybody's actually read what our definition of vegetative buffers are, because these pictures are far, far from a vegetative buffer. Section 26.8, if you'd like to review it. For example, it says at 5 feet to 15 feet of depth, comprised of 2 rows of suitable deciduous trees of minimum 3-inch caliper DBH for evergreen trees 8 feet in height, spaced 15 feet apart, and staggered in rows 15 feet apart. Spacing between the trees shall be filled with evergreen or deciduous shrub planting. There's not a picture in here that even comes close to that. And without that being on the plan as a proposed improvement, we have no way to know what it's supposed to be, or no way to check after it becomes established that it's in compliance with the plan. And that's where I struggle with the plan that's been proposed.
Okay. We are not supposed to be deliberating, right? This is supposed to be questions to...
By the December 3rd public hearing, there's not much left for Gary Bousquet to say, but he still doesn't miss an opportunity. Action?
So you gave testimony that you shut down your operations, but you've also given testimony that, and pictures, that trucks are arriving daily.
We had one truck. We had one truck that just made a delivery a couple days ago because
So it's your
I needed those
testimony
kits.
that in the last year, you have not processed or sold any mulch from your property?
No, we have not.
So where I got really confused tonight about the stormwater. First of all, a very important question hasn't been answered, which was brought up by Veronica's attorney at the last hearing, which was where did those catch basins go? Which I would think would be the most important question that we have. And the reason I'm bringing that up is we also have testimony from Torrance Down in these proceedings that the hill is stable, and that nothing leaves the hill. I also have testimony from Mr. Cashman tonight that the wood chips do leave the hill, and that sometimes they push them back up the hill.
No, it wasn't wood chips. That's the road grindings in the process, Gary. That's what's in the road bed that gets washed.
So something's eroding.
The road is. It's not paved.
Tannins contain amino acids, which cannot be seen by the eye, and go into the groundwater. Mr. Cashman tonight, I believe, testified that his sump pumps pumped the groundwater into the storm drains. And that was facilitated because of the water problem on your property you got together with Mr. Collette. So in theory, my concern is that these tannins are running down the hill, being prevented from leaving the property, sitting in a bowl, getting into the groundwater, being pumped out of the groundwater into the catch basin, which nobody has yet testified where the catch basins go, where hawks and bald eagles and fish and everything are right next to the Hammonasset River. I just, during these proceedings, I can't even believe nobody has even brought up that the Hammonasset River is how far from your house?
It's directly across the street.
I would like tonight, before the public hearing ends, maybe we can't get this answer. Where do those catch basins go?
Those catch basins go down across the street to Jamaica Road. They join another catch basin and they go between Mike Simmons' property. There's a natural swale that goes into by his home, and the water that is now collected from the actual Rapper's property. The whole neighborhood is pitched that way, including Jamaica Road, comes across the street and goes into those catch basins and goes across the street.
And
Through, I think it's 41 River Road.
and seeps into the groundwater or delivers
No, it
into
goes
the
right
river?
directly through a small swale that the town has an easement on and goes into the river.
Eventually, it all goes to the Hammonasset River.
Everything goes to the river. From 5 miles above all the way down. You can see the elevation is up to up on our property alone, it's 100 feet. And it just keeps going. Gary, how do you determine the
I'm done.
acidity?
I'm done now.
Okay.
Okay.
At the Planning and Zoning meeting where this application is finally decided, Gary Bousquet stays the course and aggressively and hostilely opposes this application as he has from the very beginning. Action?
Go ahead.
So are you saying that if we approve the farm, the mulching has to go with it, or we could approve the farm with a condition that there is no mulching?
One thing you couldn't do is you can't say that it's not permissible on a farm, because your regulation specifically says that it is. If there was something, if you had something on the record that said that, you know, this aspect of the use makes the entire use inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood and under the general special permit requirements, I think you could deny it outright. If there was something that, you know, some element of farming that you thought was perfectly appropriate and some was not, you do have a fair amount of discretion. But I certainly wouldn't want you to make a determination that it's not allowed on a farm, because the regulation specifically says that there is. But there should be something on the record for you to sort of hang your hat on if you want to deny a particular farming-related activity in the context of a special permit to conduct a farm. If you have something to hang your hat on as to why that particular aspect is problematic for the neighborhood, then that should be something that we can defend. But not that you don't like the regulations, the way they're drafted.
That's a good segue into my next question. I don't remember any discussion about where the wells are on Mr. Cashman's property or the neighbor's property.
Yeah, they're on the city water.
Everybody in the neighborhood has city water.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is an agricultural well which would be feeding. Yeah.
I guess where my concern is 12-383 C2. You need to stay 100 feet back from any well or water body from which water is taken for human consumption. So,
But they're all on,
so the applicant himself testified that water, I guess, I brought up my concern a little bit in the public hearing, that water comes to his property. The theory was that everything was going to stay on the property and that it would translocate through the soils and clean the waters. But the testimony was that it stays on the property floods, so they then pump the water into the catch basin, which flows down Jamaica Avenue into the Hammonasset River. That's a pretty good reason for denial. It's at a minimum something that should have been brought up by the applicant as to how they're going to ensure that waters that start at the top of the hill. By the way, most mulching operations are in the valley, so we've got this mulch operation on top of the hill where the water runs down. We have testimony and pictures showing that it doesn't leave the property. We have testimony and pictures that show that it does leave the property. And it's a tough one. I don't know what to do with it.
The problem is we can't separate what's been created by the mulching operation from what existed previously on the site. That obviously water has flowed out over that site for a long time. And it doesn't enter drinking water. It's being pumped into the culvert which ends up in the river, but that's not drinking water.
So it looks like our regulations do address drainage.
we're,
31-1-7. Under the performance standards, 31-1 says land buildings and other structures may be used subject to the following performance standards. Right. 31-1-7, drainage surface or roof drainage, discharge from pipes or pumps, and the diversion of runoff by means of grading, excavating, or filling, which creates structural or health hazard or any other nuisance to the owners or occupants of adjacent premises, or to the public by the reason of discharge into, onto, or across any adjacent building, premises, or public thoroughfare shall be abated by the owner of the improperly drainaged area. Appropriate stormwater control structures or measures shall be utilized to protect surrounding property from adverse impacts to the stormwater runoff. I don't think it meets that. A couple other things. When we look at a special exception in the past, probably the biggest thing that we looked at, and I agree with Chris that we've looked at this application completely different than we've looked at most of our applications. And the first thing I always look at is, what do the neighbors think? And in this case, both of their direct neighbors stood up and talked about how it's going to affect their property values. The Caffertys talked about how they don't mind the farm, but they do mind the mulching operation. Ms. Lopez, I thought, gave a wonderful testimony, heartfelt testimony that I truly believed. For me, I can't even believe, yes, a farm is 100% in keeping with that area. Absolutely. Unfortunately, 95% of the testimony we heard, we can't use. But the testimony we did get from the applicant was damning. That's from the applicant. And the testimony we got from the two direct neighbors was very believable. The Cafferty said, listen, they got a farm, I just want them to have that mulch. I can't imagine on 3 acres allowing a mulching/farm operation. Because I think what could happen is Mr. Cashman could sell, probably won't, but could sell the property to a tree company, and they could come in, say they're a farm, put a couple of chickens down in the coop, park 5 trucks up top, and run a mulching operation on bocce. That probably could happen. So we're going to not even listen to the neighbors and take into consideration. Yes, our regulations may say that we should do it. This is a special exception. The traffic study, I can't even believe that they wanted us to waive it. Traffic is one of the reasons for denial, and traffic is one of the things that all of us have some expertise in, and we're allowed to have expertise in at this table. We have testimony that trucks were backed up on that road. So we don't even have a plan to prevent any of that. So basically tonight, if we let this go through, we're going to say, you know, we're actually going to listen to the testimony, which was, you know what, the Cashmans are great people. Yes, they're great people. But I cannot imagine this happening.
I will
somewhere else
contradict
in
you,
town.
we also have testimony that there weren't trucks back on the road by other people in the neighborhood.
Which is my point. That's why we should have done a traffic study. I have this he said, she said, but I don't have, normally we would have all these experts telling us what we need to know. We'd have a study about the water that might go into the Condensation River, right? We'd have a traffic study. I mean, we required a traffic study for Beach Park Road for a residential community. What I'm saying is, we don't have the information we really need to approve this application. I don't believe that was submitted to us.
And on the other hand, we didn't ask for it.
We're not supposed to ask for it, Mr. Chairman. It is the applicant's burden to give us all the information. It is not our burden to ask the applicant for the information. So, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
So instead of having, again, maybe this was already answered, instead of having a withdrawal or a yes or a no, is it possible? Because I'm guessing here, but I don't think anybody here wants to deny the Cashmans the right to farm. I think the issue is the mulching operation. And is there a way to approve the farm with the condition that the mulching operation is supposed to account for it, that there is no mulching operation as part of that farm? And that goes to, let's say it's a farm, or,
My concern with that, and I'm open to what you're saying, but my concern with it is that we've never made that as a clear option or possibility during the public hearing, which I think might get us in trouble if we were to try to do that, particularly the way that 12.8 is written, or 1238 is written, because...
Mr. Chair, I don't think we have to. We have had other applications that,
Yeah.
farmers markets, they had to make sure, part of the requirements was that we got to see what they were making all the time. In this case, in the farm, again, back to, do they have to have animals? Is there a farm? Do they have to have anything? Do they just run a mulching operation and have no animals? So, could we say you can do mulch but not animals? I think it's a question for council, but I don't think anybody wants to deny the farm.
I guess my opinion is, for what it's worth, my opinion is that we either have to approve it with the mulching or deny it. Whether we deny that because we feel it's incomplete or that it doesn't meet the standards, either way, I don't see how we can separate it from what was essentially the primary use that was being proposed.
After 8 hours of meetings and public hearings, Planning and Zoning votes down a motion made by Bethany Knight, seconded by Alan Kravitz, to approve the application. With an arch competitor and the brother-in-law of an abutting neighbor seated as commissioners, arguing aggressively against this application throughout the process, is there any surprise at this outcome? Gary Bousquet and Adam Moore's ethical lapses give this applicant ironclad grounds to appeal the commission's decision. This did no one any favors and has cost the town and all involved very expensive legal fees that were totally wasted. Action?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the special permit with conditions as written by our attorney.
Okay. Is there a second on the motion for approval? Again, is there anyone who would like to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Second it? Okay. Would we like to then take a vote on the motion that's on the floor?
Okay, so the motion that's on the floor is the motion to approve.
Correct.
And there are no amendments to,
Correct.
to what Bethany had moved and what was seconded. Is
Correct.
that correct?
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Two.
Who's the second?
Alan. In opposition?
You just have to.
Okay, quick one. Patrick had,
He said no.
okay, Patrick, Ellen, Lon, Gary, Drew. Okay. So the application is denied. Thank you very much, everyone.
The application, only the motion was
The
done.
motion was denied.
Motion to approve.
Well, technically, if a motion to approve is, goes down, the application is denied. That's correct.
You can't bring it up.
You can't bring it up again, it's done. That's why I was asking to have it withdrawn and the other motion brought forward. But either way, it's denied. So the application is denied.
Yeah, and this sounds like it's not in this particular case, but if a motion as stated was denied, but someone wished to approve it with other conditions, another motion could be made. But absent another motion on the floor, then a failed motion to approve is in fact a denial. And there's a case that says that.
This video provided as a public service by Kirk Carr, the Kirkster. Thank you for watching.